Welcome back to the Walleye Files, guys. Brandon Ruffolo here, and we have got a fantastic podcast for you. We have got a total of 75 plus years of experience professional walleye fishing, 12 PWT top 10s, 12 FLW Walleye Tour top 10s, multiple MWC wins, the 2012 FLW Walleye Tour champion, the 2003 PWT Walleye Tour champion. Guys, we have got three amazing guests today, and I just happen to be related to one of them. It is going to be a fantastic episode. So, Danny Plautz, Dan Plautz, and my father, Jerry Ruffolo, are all here. It is going to be a great episode, a lot of information, a lot of great stories from the old days, and more than anything, it's people that I looked up to for a long time. I watched them all when I was really little. On the other side of a stage. It's special now that I get to cross that stage with those guys. Again, spent some time with my dad today. You can't beat that. I'm just really excited. It's a really special episode for me. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the Walleye Files. And of course, we cannot do this without our amazing sponsors. We have Striker Brands, of course, the makers of some of the best rain, snow, and anything else gear there is. Go early, go late, go prepared. Striker Brands, Lake Effect Lures. Matt, I appreciate you, brother. Phil, Eric, all the dudes at Lake Effect. You guys make amazing products. I've been crushing walleyes and smallies on them all year long. And of course, Walleye Nation Creations. Great product. Sponsor of the National Walleye Tour. I can't say enough good things about their products and the people that run Walleye Nation Creations. But without further ado, guys, welcome to the Walleye Files. It's going to be a great episode. Thanks for watching. All right, guys, welcome back to the Walleye Files. Again, like I said, super excited for this podcast. We've got Dan and Danny Plautz, my dad, Jerry Ruffolo. All these guys used to travel together. These are guys that I grew up watching from the other side of the stage. Lucky enough now that I get to cross that stage with them. And it's special, boys. How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing great, bud.
Glad
to
be
see
here,
you guys.
son.
Danny, how's that elbow feel? How's that bicep feel?
Oh, the bicep feels pretty good. They reattached it just last week, but I'm gonna take her nice and easy, and we're gonna come back strong.
Oh boy, that's awesome.
I bet I could beat him in arm wrestling right now.
Finally.
So we can start things off, Dan. We're going to start with you. For those who don't know you, Dan, you've been, give us a little introduction into your tournament fishing life.
All right, this could be really long. I'll try to do the short version. I had a really good friend in high school, Jack Lieben, who's still a good friend, great fisherman, and we'd skip out. I'm not lying to you. We'd skip out of school all fall, go to Army Lake, catch bass, whatever, and. Well, then I started a business, started having kids, so the fishing, him and I didn't fish, and all Sunday MWC, the Master Walleye Council, started, and they were coming to northern Wisconsin. Well, I've been vacationing up here in this area ever since I was 5 years old. My dad would bring us up once a year, and I said, "Hey, Jack, let's see what this is about." And all you need is red tails and green cabbage weeds, and one day you fish trout lakes. The other day you fished Muskellunge Lake. Well, with my busy schedule at the time, I only had one day to practice, and Jack was up for 3-4 days. And fortunately enough, I was going along the shoreline. Electronics were a little green box. That was it. 35 horse tiller on a 16-foot Miracraft. And I'm going through these weeds. I got to say this. I'm looking down, and I see these white spots going through the weeds all over. And it dawned on me, I go, oh my God, those are walleyes, the tails. So I backed off, threw a slip bobber out. I caught 5 walleyes so fast. Yeah, honestly, the fastest I ever caught them. They're only, 14 to 16 inches, but they had to be over 13. So I threw 5 in the boat, and I go run across the lake by Jack. And I go, "Hey, Jack, how you doing?" And he says, "Well, I had one 8-pounder on Trout Lake 3 days ago. I haven't caught a fish since." So I started throwing these walleyes out of my boat. And I says, "We'll be okay here." So that's how it started. And it was actually very important tournament for me because if you finished in the top 3, you automatically qualified for the championship. There was no Angler of the Year race. There was none of that. So, oh my gosh, now we qualified for the champion. We finished 3rd. And we're the only team to bring in a limit, by the way. But we finished 3rd. And so now we had to go pre-fish a river. We had to go pre-fish a flowage because it was a mystery lake. So we went fishing. And, but there's something about saying you can't buy love. And I hope you take this the right way. But I came home and gave my wife $900 the day of that 3rd place, 9 months to the day my daughter was born. Take it the way you take it. But that's when my daughter Sandy was born. And well, from there, I guess I couldn't stop fishing. The PWT came around. We made quite a few MWC championships and stuff, but I never won one. And then the PWT came around one day in 1989 on Mille Lacs Lake. And we fished it one day or 2 days, and I was in the middle of the pack. But then the next year, in 1990, it came up, and I qualified for the championships and had a couple of top 10 finishes that year. And so we got hooked. And I back up 1990, I think, is when I won the PWT on Winnebago. It was in conjunction with the Merck National, the Merck weekend in Fond du Lac. So your co-angler was competing against 200-300 guys in the Merck National, and I was strictly competing, against my competitors. And it was, they take their weight the second day and use it, blah, blah. We had it. And it's pretty impressive because when I won it, I found these fish in the cane up in Butamore. Well, the cane back then, it was literally 6 foot high. And went in there pitching the edges, and gosh, I caught a couple of nice ones in practice. So I said, we're going in there. Well, you didn't. Even then, before this all started, we were all secretive, right? I mean, you don't let the cat out. These guys could bring their own equipment. So I tell Perry, I remember his name is Perry, he's bringing his trolling rods and all these crankbaits. He figures that's it. That's the only way you fish Winnebago, right? And at that time. And I looked at him and I said, Perry, those got to go back. There ain't going to be no room in the boat for those. And then he says, I knew it. You were doing something stupid, he says. And so in we go into the cane, and I whack a couple of really good fish, and I get them. And there's boats snooping around looking, right? So I tell Perry, take your shirt off. I'm going to lay in the bottom of the boat. You act like a local looking for carp, because carp were spawning at that time in the cane. And so here I am laying in a boat, and he's talking to some of my competitors. I'm laying there. They don't even know it's my boat. You can't see it. It's too thick. Well, long story short, I was lucked out and ended up winning that tournament. And that really got me hooked. And went on from there. I won 3 other events. I won, the Lake Erie one, 2000. That was another story, because when I won that, I was in 13th place going in the last day. We were all fishing around the reefs, and a humongous lightning storm came through the night before. Just treacherous lightning storm, and it shut the fish off. There's probably 50, 60 boats fishing the same area I was fishing, pretty big, but they were all fishing it. Nobody catching fish. With an hour and a half to go, I said, that's it. We're going to the Canadian line. Those fish have to be buried in the mud. Well, that's when Genetron came out, those depth finder Genetrons, and they were really high tech for back then. And I went up to the Canadian line above North Bass, and boy, I marked these fish in the mud, not on top of the mud, but buried in the mud. So I threw a 3-ounce bottom bouncer, and I had a really cool co-angler, an older gentleman. He said he was very wealthy. He's not in it for the money. And he could see how nervous I was, because I was in 13th. I didn't want to drop out of the money. And I dropped these bottom bouncers down and doing tight circles around them. I mean, maybe 50 feet, 60 feet. And I dragged that bottom bouncer and you'd actually see them come up with the Genetron and with a floating spinner rig. And I kept catching 4 of them fairly quick, lost 2 and caught 4. And the guy goes, I don't want to touch a rod. I know how important these are to you. I don't want to touch a rod. And I had a half hour left to fish before I had to get in. And I ran a little farther up the line, marked a big fish, dropped it down, set the hook, bring it in, netted it. Didn't even have a chance to look at it. I just threw it in the back of the boat and we took off for the weigh-ins because we were 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away. And as I come into the no wake zone, he takes the fish off, throws it in the live well, and I don't know how it's big, but I figured I'd be in the top 15 at least, And damn, those fish never turned on the reef. Norb Wallach had 48 pounds a day before. He zeroed. There were some other guys that had, 45 pounds a day before. They zeroed. And Jay Jannings, he's the only one that managed to catch 4 of them, and he was ahead, but I ended up beating him by 4 pounds and never expected it. And so that was really cool. That was.
You can light scope.
What's that? What was that?
Yeah.
So you can light scope.
Genetron was the early version, forward facing sonar.
Yeah.
Shooting straight down, of course, though.
Yeah. So that was cool. I ended up winning Lake Erie, then Saginaw Bay when it turned into the RCL Ranger, Crestliner Lund series. That was something new. The first event, I go out to Saginaw Bay, and I've got a brand new Crestliner. I got all my stuff, and we went up to, I forget the name of the town, but it's farther north because they said the bite wasn't very good. We're down in the bay. They were out by Charities and further. And lo and behold, somebody that night, I get up, somebody slipped my boat cover, broke into my truck, took half my fishing rods, but only they come apart. They took the bottom half, left the tips in there, took a couple tackle boxes, and they actually took my tournament shirt with my name on it. They were hanging on the thing in there. And my brother Randy was there, and we come out, and sure enough, the guy was staying in a motel. He was on drugs, and he was high. We ended up finding my electronics. They ripped my electronics off, threw them in the dumpster. And I'm going, now what do? I got 1 day. And sure enough, Crestliner, they ship a new cover. Guys, our fishermen back then helped out. One guy gives me a locator. One guy gives me some rods. And it was my turn. And that one, it was a 3-day event. I drew Gary Parsons the first day. He had to fish as a co-angler to fish this circuit because he wasn't sure which circuit he was going to stick with, right? So he wanted to make sure he fished right. Everybody says, oh, man, that's cheating. How the hell did that happen? But yeah, we went out. We had an okay day. Not a great day, but we had a good day. Of course, you don't have to tell him what to do. You don't even have to ask for the net. You don't have to do nothing. We got along really good. Well, the second day, I get this guy from the UP. He pulled in, and no offense to it, but his car needed to be re-rusted because some paint started to show. And and he brings this little tackle box with spinners on it. And he says, my dad says this is the only I said, listen, you can't bring nothing in our boat. Take those back. Oh, okay. So he takes them back. Well, we have a pretty good day. Our bite was tough, but we got our limit. We come in, and I moved up into the top 5. And Norb Wallach, Rick LaCourse, all those guys gone. They were doing good. Well, he happened to finish 5th, and I finished 5th, so I had him again the last day. And we get in the boat, and it was rough. I mean, there was legitimately 3.5 footers to start. We have to run, 12 miles, and take off. We get a little ways, and he's going, oh, my back, my back, my back. I turn around, I said, you sit in the back of that boat. I don't want to hear another word out of you. There's a lot of money at stake. So we go out there, we start fishing, and oh my gosh, we start getting him. Well, now his back doesn't hurt, nothing hurts. He's good. We're catching our fish. We got to come in. And I says, I don't know. We got some fish, but we're not going to win. He says, I'll tell you what, if I win this tournament, I'm going to spend a week at Hooters. Instead of getting a different car, you're going to spend a week at Hooters. No lie. That's the kind of different people you meet on the circuit. Thank God it's only once every 10 years. But yeah, we ended up winning it. He never even showed up on stage. Never came up and got his check. He was at Hooters, and that was pretty cool. We won that one. And I don't want to take up all the time.
We'll talk about the other one in a little while.
Yeah.
So, Danny, your first event as a pro was 2002.
That is correct.
And your first
event as a pro in 2002.
I remember that,
also.
Jerry.
Yep. We both ended up in the top 20.
Yeah, we
and
did.
And it finished in second.
Yeah, finished second. First tournament right out of right in the middle of college. And Jerry, I believe you were the one that gave me those beads, those rattle beads.
Yes.
Yeah, we were jigging, and I was catching some fish in the Trenton Channel there, right where we were, right by the one of our discharges, and I had that big bite that was going out on the lake, but that Trenton Channel saved me. That I believe it was the third day that that bite saved me to move up into the top 10 to fish that last day. So I thank you for that. That's when I think our friendships started. Was that year?
That's where things first got started in that particular event. But I can remember a couple things from that event. I remember Danny coming off the stage and holding this fish up, and the big females are leaking spawn all over the stage while he's standing up there. 19-year-old kid with his first major event. It was my first major event too. I had fished the FLW tour the year before as a co-angler just to get a taste of what I was going to be dealing with. And I drew Jeff Taggy the year before my first event, and we fished together. And we fished together after that in a practice session. I remember the tournament at Saginaw when I was sitting next to Jeff, and Gary Parsons was there when Dan drew him as the day one partner. I remember that very well. But the particular event, the Detroit River event where Danny took second, I took 17th. The thing I can remember the most about that was I caught some really nice fish out on Erie, but it just didn't seem to be a consistent bite. Like you needed to go out there and work your butt off to get your 5. And so I made a decision to stay in the Trenton Channel. And I'm on my first drift of the Trenton Channel, and I look to my left, and there's Tommy Scarless, and I look to my right, and here's Mike Goldfron, and I'm like, I'm way, way out of my league. What am I doing?
There's your moment. That's do you think you talk about NFL guys? Hey, what's your welcome to the NFL moment? That was your welcome to the pros moment?
It was too. And I had a guy in the boat, was a good jig fisherman. And I was basically talking to him, and I was going through the sequence of what I was doing. And I told him, I go, just make sure that as you pull up and you let down, when it hits bottom, don't let that line curl. Don't let it lay slack, because this area was just a jig eating place. I would go through 10 to 15 jigs myself a day. And I was demonstrating to him what I was doing, and all of a sudden I let the rod down, and I lifted up, and I felt, and I just felt that. I lifted up, and the next thing you know, I'm fighting a fish, getting it around, comes around the boat, comes around to the side, and the guy nets it. First fish in my first tournament, first 5 minutes, 31 inches.
Jeez.
And I'm like, I'm off and running at this point. And like I said, I looked and Goldfron turned and looked at me, and he gave me a thumbs up. Mike and I had known each other for a few years before that. So it was like okay, I can handle this. I can do this. This is going to go well. And I ended up qualifying. They had a top 20 at that point, where advanced to the semifinal round, and I made the top 20. And then unfortunately on the final day, for me at least, day 3 of the tournament, things didn't go nearly as well, and I only had one fish for like 3 pounds. But tremendous experience, and basically my intro to tournament fishing and the way I got going.
Love it. So, Danny, why don't you go? Obviously, we just talked about your first event, but over the last, we have 75 plus years of experience between the 3 of you. It's probably closer to 85. Danny, you've had some really great highs, and I don't feel like you've hit nearly as many lows as I have. You are much more consistent. Talk about some of the highs. Talk about winning a championship, and almost winning a second one the year after.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, I had a lot of highs, that I started that in 2002, fishing, obviously, for going to every single tournament with my dad, as a kid. So it was always, etched in my blood and in my brain that I was going to fish tournaments. And so, yeah, I had a lot of great success, throughout the years, cashed a lot of checks, had numerous um, big fish tournament, stuff like that. My first, my first tournament was at Detroit River, took second place. I believe I missed winning that one by maybe a pound and a half,
Under
if
two
I'm not
pounds.
mistaken.
Under 2 pounds.
Under
Yep.
2 pounds, and the guy that was closest to me in third was maybe 15 to 18 pounds below me. And that tournament was great. I had a 4 pounder in my live well that I wish I would have gotten rid of. I had 35 something and change, and I had a 4 pounder I knew I needed to get rid of. But I was 19 years old. It was, I knew that the river fish, were going to get pounded pretty hard being the weekend. So yeah, just went over there and rolled the dice. Ended up taking second, so that was a good start. My first win was with actually my first win was with my mom, in Spring Valley for the NWC, when we were fishing against 220 boats down there in Spring Valley. Won that event. That was an awesome event, winning that one. And then my next one was the last FLW championship in the Quad Cities. That was the big one for me. Went in there and found those. We had a buddy of ours that said he was catching some fish. Not very many legals, but the current was low, and I went in there the first half a day of practice and caught a couple fish. And I said, "Yep, this is where I'm fishing tournament. This is where I'm going to win it." And it was the exact spot that we ended up pulling the W on that one. It was pitching up there by the power dam. So it was a lot of fun doing that. And then the very next year, we started the NWT circuit because FLW went away. So the NWT, we went to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. I had a great season that first year in NWT. Had a lot of good finishes, and then that championship in Devil's Lake. And oh man, our buddy Rick Darling, he still owes me a lot. And he told me not to keep anything under 18 inches, and because we were on some pretty big fish. And my first two fish in the boat were 2 5.5 pounders, and then I dropped two big ones, and then by the time I looked at then I dropped two big ones, and then I had then I caught like an 18 and a quarter incher, which is a 2.5 pound fish. They were pretty stout fish in the fall there. And I'm holding this fish, and I'm looking at they're coming pretty fast, and I'm like, I better let this one go. He said not to keep anything under, anything close to 18 inches. So I pitched it back, and by the time I knew it, I had a half hour left to fish before I had to get in. I was sitting on two fish, and I ran to a bridge and picked up maybe a half pound, 16-inch walleye. And it was so small. And then I was sitting in like 63rd place or something like that. And then the next couple of days proceeded to have the heaviest weights of the tournament, like 20-pound catch. The second day vaulted me all the way up into like fourth place, and then ended up winning that one by 3/4 of a pound. And then when I got up on stage, because the last day I had like 26 or 27 pounds, and I looked at him. I told Rick, I'm like, you owe me a lot of money, mister. I said, letting that fish go, I felt weighed in two fish short of my limit that first day. And yeah, it would have been a good time. That's the one that John Gilman won. So, or Tom, not John. No.
Chris Gilman.
Chris Gilman. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that was a good event. And then a few years later, ended up winning an MWC event with my mom again in Petenwell. That was a good time. That was a fun event. And then since then it's been, pretty consistent. Family is growing. They're into travel sports. So had to cut back a little bit in tournament fishing, as they're growing. So didn't fish as many events as I used to, but still in it, still competing, and loving every minute of it.
So Danny talked about winning a championship. What's it like winning a championship?
Well, it's incredible. And I don't know if there's any other father and son that each one won a championship. The one I won up in Houghton, Michigan, I guess the stars just aligned. You know, people say you can be good, but to win, there is some luck involved or whatever. Well, I missed the first day of practice because there was some event going on with the high school kids that I couldn't miss. I forget what it was, but I went up there a day late, and that first day of practice, there was the locals that would pay to fish with a pro in their own individual tournament. It was one fish, big fish tournament. So that's how the PWT would raise some money to do this, right? Well, I had a professor from the college up there. He got in my boat and he says, "Oh man, I don't even fish." And I says, "Okay, well, let's go." And I haven't even pre-fished yet, right? So I went out into Chassel Bay, and I started trolling right away. And lo and behold, the very first fish we catch is about a 7-pound walleye. And I have no clue. I was just getting set up. You know, I didn't even have spots marked, nothing yet, right? And it was off of the weed line by probably 50 yards. And he caught it, and it's like a 6-7 pounder. And I looked at him and I says, "Hey, if you," and we caught another one about 4 pounds before we even finished the troll. I said, "If you don't mind, would you take the 4-pounder up on stage instead of the 7? Because there's been a whole bunch of tournament guys driving around looking, right? They don't know we caught fish, but I don't want them to see that. Hey, I pulled a 7-pounder out of there, right?" So the guy says, "Oh, I have no problem with that." No, not at all. So he took it in. Well, he didn't win, but he came in second with a 4. So from there, I'm going, okay, this is going to be this is it. This is where I'm going to fish the tournament. You know, I had 3 more days of practice. I'll go looking. Well, the last day of practice, the fog came in. It was so thick that you really could not see 50 yards. You couldn't see shoreline 40 yards. And so I got Barb in the boat with me, and we started trolling, and I think I caught 3 fish on that first pass again. And everybody was kind of complaining because there was so much bait fish in the system in the Houghton. And guys in the river that got in the river were catching some nice fish. And I just thought to myself, well, this is where I'm going to fish. Well, that night, Dean Miller was working with us. Remember, Jerry? Dean Miller?
I do. I fished the practice period. I was up there fishing with him.
Right, and you were fishing with us that year, and you just missed it coming up there. Well, Dean Miller calls me that night before the tournament, and he goes, "Hey, Dan, I'm looking through the rules book, and it says in Michigan you can use 2 lures on 1 rod, 2 rods." And I'm trolling crankbaits, right? And I'm going, "Come on." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm just letting you know that it's so low." So I call up Mark Thorne, tournament director, right, or whatever, and I said, "Hey," or was it, I forget if it was Mark or Jim, but I said, "Hey, I got a question for you. It's legal to run 2 lures off of 1 rod, and you could have 2 rods. Is there something against that in yours?" And he goes, "Oh, no." I said, "Please don't tell anybody." and I did. I said, "Please don't tell anybody." He goes, "Dan, we're going to have to talk about this, what you're doing, because I never thought of this, you know." And so what I did is I put on a Hottentot, and I put on a floating Rapala, and the Hottentot would take it down, and it was 4 feet behind the thing. And lo and behold, okay, I make the top 10. I'm not leading it. So we have our little talk. And Mark's looking at me, just shaking his head. He goes, "How in the world did you think of that?" And I said, "Well, I'll thank Dean later." Well, long story short, I go out the second day, and Pete Harsh is fishing next to me, and Daryl Christensen's pitching underneath some piers. And I would pretend I'm letting out a lot of lead core, okay, because I'm fishing in the middle of the Chassel. So I'm pretending, but I'm only letting the lures out 30 feet. So they weren't going down very far. And I'm letting it out like that. And I end up catching a pretty nice bag. And I said, "We're going out to the main lake because I'm going to save this." Well, I go out to the main lake, and I'm doing the same thing, and I catch a big fish, like a 6.5, 7 pounder. So it turns out I didn't even have to fish the third day. I had enough weight, but we were going to go back the third day, and the fog came in again. Well, they wouldn't release us. There was a delay. And I said, well, my bite's early in the morning. And I had the camera guy with me, right? They always put a camera guy in the boat, whatever, in the last day, the top guys. I said, this is going to hurt. We lost an hour and a half of fishing. And I shoot down there and get in there, and he's filming. And when there's a camera guy on my boat, I don't catch fish. I just don't. And we fished 2 hours, never caught a fish. And I'm not leaving. I said, well, there's going to be an afternoon bite, but we got to get in early. And sure enough, 2 o'clock comes. I got my limit, and we were done. But they never got me on film catching the fish. So that was pretty incredible. Well, that was the Merck National Championship, right? Mercury sponsored that. And I was in my Yamaha wrap boat and Yamaha motors. Well, long story short, next year I was in Mercury. They came and sat down. So things happen for a reason, It was really good. It was really good. So
you talk about back then, between the three of you guys, tournament fishing back then was, quote, the glory days for a lot of people. I feel like the industry was in a much stronger place. If you think of the industry now, how can we improve it to get back to that point?
I don't know if we're gonna. I'll be honest with you. With Bass Pro taking over Cabela's, with all the boat changes with the same owners, you don't see the competition anymore. We lose Evinrude. Suzuki's basically in small individual tournaments, 1 or 2 a year. They're not out there. So you've got Yamaha and basically Mercury. So, honestly, as a corporate guy, they're going to say, we don't need to sponsor all these guys. We're getting all the coverage. That's my feeling. I'm just saying that's my feeling. And I'm still as loyal to Mercury as I've ever been. I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever get back to that. I really don't. There's so many different circuits out there now. I just don't know. What do you think, Jerry?
Kind of agree with you. I think social media has changed fishing in just an incredible way. The fact that Dan could go to Lake Winnebago and Butamore and figure out a cane bed bite. The fact that you could have a bite in Castle Bay that you figure out a suspended bite. Those secrets are no longer secrets anymore. And a lot of that is because of social media. I just don't think that you'll ever see the quote unquote glory days of tournament fishing ever again. Simply because information is so available and so readily, it's very easily accessed. I'm not the YouTube guy when I'm out guiding and when I'm out fishing. I have people that get in the boat and they want to shoot videos, and I tell them, feel free to shoot a video, do what you want to do. I don't think I'll ever find myself as the guy that is going to have a YouTube channel and is going to broadcast what he does on the water on a day-to-day basis. I think that has a huge impact on the industry itself. It creates stars in a very fast way, simply because the way to learn and the way to apply the techniques now, it isn't as long. It doesn't take as long to apply those techniques. You were telling me about one of the guys on the NWT, Brandon, that hasn't really fished it that long, and he's been met with a lot of success. I can't remember who the guy was.
Tom Wynn. He's only been walleye fishing for 5 years.
Yeah, that's unheard of. That somebody could pick something up that easily, go on YouTube, watch various videos, learn how to do something, learn how to use various techniques, and then apply them that quickly. I think that affects the industry immensely. Just that information is that readily available, where people can, make a dent and become well known in the industry that quickly. Whereas you have Dan, who worked at it for years and years and years to get to where he was. So I think that's the biggest change within the industry. There's other stuff that you could talk about, whether you're for or against forward-facing sonar, whether there should be a limit on fishing boundaries in tournaments. That doesn't exist anymore. You watch the NWT, guys are fishing Sault Ste. Marie, and they're going across Sault Ste. Marie through the channel and all the way to almost another body of water, going 200 miles a day. It's nothing. And when we were doing it, when I was doing it back in the early 2000s, there was always a boundary to every event. These events were never boundaryless. So to me, that affects a lot that goes on in the tournament circuits, where you have access and you have 400 horse motors and you can go anywhere you want to go. Not saying I'm for it or against it. It just definitely affects things for sure. And it becomes a long distance venture versus apply the skill, find a group of fish, work a small area, and pick off a few fish where you can go and access fish almost to another body of water.
Danny, thoughts?
I don't think we'll ever see those glory days like you guys said in the past, but I think there's ways to make it better, to bring the hype back a little bit, maybe artificial only events, live weigh-in events. Bass does it, BASS does it, where they live weigh the fish while they catch them, they release them, and you go from there. Bring one fish to the scale, one of your big fish to the scale to show up on stage. I think there's ways around it, and just to improve it, to gain that sponsorship stuff, for the circuits and things like that, with the artificial stuff. And I think there's ways. I think we're missing the boat with having live feed during the day. Live updates, things like that. I know that takes a lot of resources to do that, but it takes an individual or a group to come together to bring those ideas forward. I think those are some of the ways that we can help our walleye circuits. Some small ideas like that. I don't think we'll ever get to those, big monster payouts, but I think there's ways to improve it.
I like it. Yeah, I agree. I think the live coverage, I think, is possibly the biggest factor for us in the walleye world. Like the bass world, there's a lot of headbutting in the bass world, whether it's forward facing or rules violations or whatever. There's plenty of negativity, but I think if you transition to that positive side of things, if you market yourself and your anglers more, if you do more to show off your anglers and to market your anglers, because the bass world, everybody is a business, right? Every single person is treated as a business. Think if the National Walleye Tour or AIM or other Master Walleye Circuit, they decide to help, take the bull by the horns a little bit, more live coverage or live coverage in general, and just help market the anglers a little bit. I think it's a more successful tour all around, because it keeps the NWT anglers or the professional anglers more successful. And I also think it keeps them as a tour successful, because people are going to want to watch that.
Yeah, 100% correct.
And I don't know, there's another thing that a little bit on me, this is just me, not anybody else, but all these tournaments with slot sizes and one fish over 20 and no call, that's where catch, record, and release comes in, where the best fisherman's going to win, and not just saying it, but for instance, Danny in this last tournament on the Mississippi had to throw back 2 29-inchers the last day because he had 2 23s in the boat. It would have blown it away, but that doesn't mean the guy that won doesn't deserve the win, because who knows how many he threw back. You know what I mean? So that's kind of off, and for me anyways, because a lot of our tournaments now are in slot size tournaments. And since I haven't been able to fish the last basically 2.5 years because of medical issues and stuff, that I don't think I'll ever be able to catch up to these young guys that are using this forward facing sonar thing. And not against them, they're great at it. Don't get me wrong, they're great at it.
You had Genetron though. We didn't.
Yeah, they stopped making them. They got rid of them. They were out in the ocean out of California. Yeah, but think about that. That's back in '89. They were $900. Do you know what that would be equivalent to right now? Be probably over your $3,000 forward-facing sonar one. But I don't know. I love it. It's still great. I got so many close friends. Jerry, you're one of them, and I've got co-anglers that have fished with me the first day all the way through. We still stay in contact with. I've got great stories where pro with pro helped each other out in an immense way and fun. It wasn't so cutthroat, you know. Yeah, you want to win and you're not going to give, you know, your secrets away. I always said there's 2 fishermen in the world that don't lie. I'm one and I didn't meet the other one yet. But, you know, when it comes to spots and so forth, but I'm just kidding. But yeah, I don't know. That the groups that are fishing together are tight. I understand that. But if you got 5, 6 guys, you know, like in Tom's caliber, and they can cover anywhere, there's no limited, you know, space to fish. It's tough for 2 guys like Danny and Jerry to fish together, or 2 guys to cover enough water to try to come in with that information. I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys or not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
who's on your Mount Rushmore of anglers?
That's a good one because I was thinking about this one, and I grew up in the heydays of like you got the Glorvigans, you got Rick Olson, you know, we have Ron Seeloff, you know, we had a lot of great guys that I grew up idolizing along with my dad. So I've really thought about this one a lot. Honestly, you know, you got to put it up there. Gary Roach is one of them. He's got to be one of them there. You know, Mike Goffron's another one. He's such a great guy, great fisherman, had all that success, you know, just a fun dude to be around all those years. And another guy that's been around a long time, you know, Jason Shakurt, you know, he's a class act dude, you know, he's had great success. Good friend, just a great dude. And then, you know, I probably have to throw my dad in there at some point. You know, he taught me everything I knew, so had to throw him in there. And Jerry, you know, we learned a lot. So yeah, that's a tough question, dude. That is really a tough question because I grew up in the heydays of, you know, like Mike McClellan. You know, you got Mark Martin and let's see here, Daryl Christensen, all those guys, all great guys that paved the way to what we know now. You know, the Walleye Insider. That was it. Yeah. So a lot of legends.
We talked about this in the boat the other day. I asked him that question. The boat took us a little bit of time. And I've talked about this with some other friends before. We talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And I think the guys that really paved the way, you know, like you said, for what we have now, Mike Goffron for sure. Tommy Scarless, in my eyes, is consistent as anybody. I think Tom Keenan.
Yep.
Somebody like an Al Linder or Gary Parsons who really opened the world up to walleye fishing. But Dan, what do you got?
Well, all of those guys qualify. There's no doubt about it. Every one of them qualifies. But you know, I got Bobby Probst on the top, senior, only because of personal reasons. In the championship, there was a huge storm, and my wife's 7 months pregnant, and we're 50 miles from getting back, and there's tornado warnings. And we pull into this little bay, and there's only one truck parked there with a trailer. And we're just going to ride out the storm. Well, who do you think it is? Bobby Probst. He comes pulling in, and he looks at Barb, and he knows us. And he says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Well, ain't going to get back to my truck. It's too rough." He goes, shows me his car keys and says, "Well, take my truck and bring it back." And so he was good. I mean, you talk about somebody that could jig fish and pull bottom bouncers and spinners. He taught me a lot. I loved him. The next one, of course, you know, you got to throw Al Linder in there and stuff. I had the pleasure to fish with him out on Erie. He wanted to fish with me after I won a tournament. He wanted to go out with me, and he was great. A lot of talk. And actually, my high school buddy Jack Liben, who doesn't fish anymore, he was so stubborn. When Casey Clark told him about using jigging spoons back in the mid '80s on rivers for walleyes and in the lakes, Jack wouldn't give it up, and he would use it. And gosh, he had some good tournaments with him. You know, Mike Offran's right there, Gary Parsons right there. I mean, they're all there. Yeah, and the guys that I grew up, unfortunately, they're gone. You know, I learned a lot from Rick Olson, Rick LaCourse. He was good on Lake Erie. Learned a lot from him on that confidence. And Tony Dolly, he was on the Missouri River. I got them. He wanted to fish with me one day, and he told me a lot about the early days on the Missouri River and stuff. So I had a lot of guys that I idled, and I like Mike Goffron and those guys. No, I don't want them to find my fish, because if they find my fish, it's over. They're good, you know. So Daryl Christensen, same way. Love the guy. So I guess that's more than 4, but I can't make it out. How about you?
You, your last one.
You're the last one, Jerry.
I think it's really hard to narrow it down to 4 guys. And Mount Rushmore is only 4 figures. To narrow it down to 4 is really difficult. But I'll do it. And I'll do it kind of in eras versus just naming, say, the 4 best. The first guy that comes to me is the guy who was the 5-time champion, was Ron Seelhoff. Funny story. We were fishing Erie together, our group, and we had a blow day on day 2, and we ended up carousing and watching movies and having a few drinks. And we decided to go out in the town in Port Clinton. And first place we walk into, who's at the bar? There's Parsons, there's Cavallas, there's Seelhoff, there's Ole, Shannon Keel, Jim Click, a whole bunch of characters in this bar, all hooting it up and having a good time. And I played a little bit of pool and having a good time. And Seelhoff is sitting next to me, and I talked to him for about 10 minutes and about various things. And this is my first full year of the PWT. And once again, as I'm looking around, I'm thinking to myself, I am totally out of my element here. Holy Christ! Look at the guys that are here, you know, and they're very available and super nice guys to me at that time. And I'd be the first to admit I am a troller. I excel more at trolling even to this day now than I ever have. And Ron Seelhoff was always influential. Probably one of the best trollers of all time. And after Ron Seelhoff, I kept Goldfraun out of my list because he was my friend, and he was a guy that I actually did stuff with before I got involved in the tournament circuit. So I kept him off my list. I could have easily put him on that. And the same thing with Dan. I didn't put Dan on my list simply because he's a close friend, and he's not somebody he's somebody that's always been available, and I could always talk with him versus guys that you observe from the side. I have to put, and this is I'm gonna use this as one person with 2. It's going to be 2 people, but Gary and Keith have had more influence on the walleye world than did pretty much anybody, from a marketing standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, from a lure creation standpoint, from being involved in creating circuits. So they're very high on that list. So I would say Gary and Keith are part of that list. A guy that was always good to me and was great to my kids, and my kids loved him, and it was very hurtful to them the day he passed away, was Tommy Scarless. He would be high on my list also. Again, I'm trying to narrow this thing down to 4 people. I don't know how to do it. Narrow it down to 4 people. It's very difficult to do. And then I go to the FLW tour, and you go to the leading money winner of all time in the FLW tour. At the time when I walked away from it was Tom Keenan. How do you not have that guy in your Mount Rushmore? He's easily one of the best sticks of all time. He excelled on the tour and did fantastic stuff. So again, I can't narrow this down to 4, and I've named a whole bunch of names, and you can kind of place them wherever you want to place them. But to me, they're all part of what's developed from the walleye fishing circuits.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Can I give you a really quick meeting with my first meeting with Ron Seeloff?
Absolutely.
It was a classic. We were doing a PWT and we were staying on the islands. Well, the first day we were there for practice, it was so rough the ferries would not take you across. So the second day we got across, and here I am on the ferry sitting there, and here comes Ron Seeloff, who we don't know, right? It's the first, I think probably the first time he started fishing. And he's got his little boat, his little 18-foot boat and stuff. We all did back then, and a skeeter. And we're talking, blah, blah, blah. He says, yeah, I've never been out here. I don't know what's going on. And nobody has yet. Gary hasn't even turned on the trolling bite yet, right? With the segmented lead core. None of that was in fact yet. Well, first day, who do I draw? I draw Ron Seeloff because it was pro with pro. And he says, well, I guess we're going to take your boat because I had a 135, he had a 50. And I said, okay, yeah. And that's when we had Lorans, right? There was no GPSs or nothing. And the shooting range there, when they're shooting, they shut the singles off. You ain't got it. And it was foggy that morning. And Ron brings his stuff in a boat, and all he's got is 2 bait casters. And I'm going, Ron, we're going to start out at the reef, and then I'm going to be going out to 50 foot of water and dragging red tails like I do up north, right? Because nobody knew these other bites were going on yet. And, I'm sorry. And so he gets in my boat. We run to the reef, and I'm pitching, jigging minnow, and he could have 4 fish only that year. And I catch 3 right away. I got 3 fish in the live well. He ain't got none. And I'm watching this casting rod. He's getting bites, but he's not feeling them. And I said, hey, Ron, you want to use my rod? He looked at me real serious, but he's in a fun way. He looked at me and goes, you don't touch my equipment. I won't touch yours. I said, okay. So we fished for like 4 hours. He did not catch any there. I said, we got to go. Let's go to the deep water. If we catch 1 fish out there, it'll weigh more than 3 of these. And he goes, okay, so we got to go through in between the islands, and it's rough. It's blowing now, okay? Bah, 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 bah. We get over there, and I throw a red tail out. And I mean, I'm not there 10 minutes if I don't get a bite. I get about a 7-pounder, and I get it up. And I said, here, you here's the red tail. No, I'm not touching your bait. You're not touching mine. I said, oh, God, he was pretty serious. So we ran back to the reef. He said, let's go to the reef. I'll try to catch 4. Well, he decided to use my rod. He says, well, maybe I'll try it. And sure enough, he caught 3. And we were the closest friends since then. But when we got back with the TV cameras rolling and stuff, Al Linder's there, and he's got the cameras rolling, we pull up to the dock at the island, and Ron goes to me, he goes, hang on, I'll be right back. And Al goes, where you going? He says, I'm going to go to my boat and get my paddle and beat the hell out of him like he just did me. Because it was so rough out. And that was it. That's the kind of guy he was. He was just a fun, down-to-earth guy. So,
Dan, you got a story from while you guys traveled together?
Oh my goodness.
A story?
There were so many. I don't even know what.
Dingoes running in the motel room.
Oh yeah, we had wild dogs running around.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see here. My goodness.
Boxes of
Well,
crawlers.
Jerry, I want to bounce back to that blow day that we had out on Erie.
Yeah.
When we were in that bar, because Jimmy Click was there, and I believe I just turned 21. So I just turned 21 just a couple of days, and Jimmy Click grabbed me around the neck, and he goes, "Let's go, buddy." He goes, "We're gonna go get some tattoos."
Fear the gargoyle.
Yes, you remember that? And he came back.
That was going to be my story. Believe it or not, that was going to be my funniest story, one of them. Because I will never forget that.
I will never forget. He came back like 4 hours later because we were all still there, and he goes, "That has to be the worst decision I've ever made." He was all swollen up. He had the tattoo around his neck, and I'm like,
he got ink from his back around the front of his body and all the way up into his neck. Now, not a good decision when you're going to go fishing the next day.
And he had gauze everywhere. He had gauze everywhere.
No, but honestly, Jerry, I think some of the best times that we've ever had was probably Devil's Lake. And then our Escanaba tournaments that we've always had over the years in the PWT, finding those fish all by ourselves and letting everybody know that nobody else was out there. And, there's just been a lot of great stories over the years. Just so many. 20 years.
My favorite was the Escanaba one just because I got to pre-fish with you guys. Like that was, to me, like 10, 11, 12 years old, that was some of the most special pre-fishing memories I could ever have is hopping in the boat. The first time I ever met Dan, the three of us fished together in Big Bay. First time I ever met you, he was borrowing your boat for that tournament. That's just, for me, that's, and then we, like Mason Props and I actually talked about this before the first NWT about watching weigh-ins. That was, for me, it was like traumatic. Like I would watch a screen and wait for it to refresh, waiting for names to show up because I wasn't at the weigh-ins because I had to go home for school or for football practice or whatever. Some of those old days, the old days were great. I don't mind the new days so much.
I don't mind. But you know what? Like, Brandon, like, back in the day, like when we were in Bismarck and the Coliseum and all that, you go up to Houghton when we're in those big venues.
That's what I want to see.
You got 2,000, 4,000, 5,000 people sitting there just screaming. That's when we were kids and we were watching this happen. And then you were like, we want to get to that point. We can't wait to cross that stage. Yeah. And, it's awesome. Now, you get the live weigh-ins and things like that. You get to see that kind of stuff. But there was nothing like going across the stage like in the PWT days when you get pulled around and
getting the truck pulled around the ice center, throwing frisbees and hats to all the fans of 2,000 people in there. It was incredible.
That was fun.
Well, I won't mention the guy's name, but Jerry probably will when I tell a story of the championship in Bismarck. And we had to go in the Coliseum, and this gentleman was right in front of me to weigh in. And he was having issues with his sponsors that year and so forth. And I'm behind him, and I got a pretty good bag, but he's got a big bag. Well, lo and behold, you come in, all the lights are off in the Coliseum, and a spotlight hits you, right? And you drive around this arena with a spotlight. He strips down to a Speedo, and he comes in. Do you remember that, Jerry? And there he is going across there. Al, and there's that was the fastest weigh-in you ever heard of.
He had the Captain America underwear on.
He did. He did. Yeah. But
things that I'm okay that we don't see nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
you can tell stories about that guy all day.
Jerry, but back then, like the sponsors, you'd come in and you'd have an Evernew trailer, Mercury trailer, Yamaha trailer.
Everybody was there.
All the boat companies were there, and they all worked together to get you back on the water if something broke down. Because I had 3 engines go down on me in one season, and I ended up using a camera boat 3 of those days. But that's the kind of camaraderie we all had together. They just tried to help out.
For sure.
I think one of the most special things about this, like the fact you guys all travel together, I've met some of my best friends in the world fishing tournaments. I've met some of the best relationships you could ever have with people is doing this, is fishing tournaments and meeting some of the people that you meet along the way. If he doesn't hop in any of these tournaments, I don't know you guys from anyone. That's special.
Yeah, those relationships that we had from those days are really special. It's no different than having family and having family where you don't see them often enough. It's the same thing with Dan and Danny. I would love to have more time, and wish they had more time, and we could get together and do things as often as we used to. And life doesn't sometimes just doesn't allow us to do that.
That's for sure.
You know, those guys are as close to my family as anybody else is, for sure.
Yeah, you married my girlfriend.
There you go. She still likes you, Dan.
That's been a standing joke forever.
Yep.
Yeah, she's sweet. But
all right, before we close this out, I want one thing for you guys, from each guy. How can somebody, whether it's me, whether it's somebody who fishes from the bank, who's somebody, a weekend warrior who just hops out on the water a couple of days a week, how can what's one thing you can take away to be a better angler?
Who wants to go first?
Go right ahead.
You want me to
go ahead,
sure,
Jerry.
you can go first.
Nothing gets learned faster than having time on the water and making sure that you have time on the water. As a fishing guide, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm retired from the nuclear world, and all I do is guide at this point. I get people that come to the Green Bay area that want to learn Green Bay, and the only way to learn is to get out there and do it. Green Bay can be treacherous. There's enough places there now, especially with the water being as low as it is right now, that you could find yourself running aground in the middle of nowhere. You can't go over the top of Frying Pan Shoal right now. You can't go over the tops of the backside of Grassy Island. So those things are treacherous. I have more people now that learn how to fish Green Bay through me than any time that I could recall, where I get people that call to book a trip and they're coming for a 3 to 4 day week or weekend. And the first day they're going to spend the half day or full day with me, and I'm going to take them around and show them different places. That is the fast track to me to learning. The other fast track being what we had mentioned earlier about YouTube, how quickly those who aren't experienced can grab YouTube videos and learn and then apply that learning out on the water themselves. That's by far to me the fastest way. The development of relationships would be the most difficult part, because sponsorships and money aren't nearly as readily available as they were, say, back in 2000. When I first got going in it and was able to have a few good events and then show myself on the stage and present a positive platform, that launched things for me. I would end up talking with somebody and call somebody about sponsorship, and they say, "Oh, are you the guy that was with so and so last year?" And, "Oh yeah, that's me." And next thing you know, you're striking relationships very quickly. I don't think it's that easy to do anymore. I think it's far more difficult because the money simply isn't there like it used to be. Thinking back to those tournaments when Danny took second in that Detroit River event and I took 17th. I took 17th place in that event. I think I won like $8,000. What's it take to win $8,000 in a tournament nowadays? You got to finish in about the top 10.
No, I think it's right around 6th, maybe.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's probably the thing that stops tournament fishing or guys developing into tournament angling more than anybody is the financial situation. So, but I would say still for somebody that wants to really get involved and get into that portion of the industry, the time on the water is the most valuable time you're going to spend. I lost you.
Nope.
You need to teach yourself how to present that platform, but in order to get the opportunity to do it, you need to. Nowadays, I think it's bigger now to be somebody that finishes high in the circuit than any time now. That you have to have that ability and you have to have that time in the water.
Danny?
You know what? I'm just going to bounce off that with Jerry. Time on the water, whether it's, just bluegill fishing in a small pond, just learning fish movement, fish habitats, fish, what they're doing each and every day. I just now my kid just came down the stairs and said that he's going fishing. We got a pond a half block down the road, and he takes all his neighbor kids fishing. I don't know, there's about 10 boys that run around, go fish that pond in our neighborhood. And, but the more they learn to going out there each and every day, will, that will result into, more success on other bodies of water. And just seeing that, just time on the water and just, weather changes, things like that, just taking notes, like Jerry, YouTube videos. I do more e-scouting for walleye events now. I just turn on YouTube and just search the body of water and just go, and whatever videos pop up, I try to learn whatever I can off those videos. And especially like the Mississippi, a body of water or a section of the pool that we've never fished before. Just watching short little clips. I can't get out there every day. I don't give the time to get out there and spend 2 weeks on a body of water to try to figure it out. I got a few days. And so, just time on the water to figure it out. And then just watching YouTube videos to just make yourself a better angler. And yeah, that would be my advice for this.
What do you got, Dan?
Well, if we're talking about becoming a competitive angler in the circuits, in the big circuit, or just becoming a better fisherman, is two different programs as far as I'm concerned. If you want to be a competitive angler and make a career out of it and stuff, you would better be on the internet, YouTube. And I'm afraid what this AI is going to bring in, because they've got apps now that you can go to any lake and it'll highlight where the walleye should be, where the bass should be. Well, my gosh, when Jerry, you and I, when we went to lakes back then, we got to figure that out. Now they're already telling you that, So I'm leaning more like when I got more grandkids and I do these kids events, to just go out and have fun and do it and not put that pressure on me no more. Because I haven't fished in 2 years now, 2.5 years. I'm looking forward to the kids events. I'm looking forward to those things. But to be competitive, Danny's right on, Jerry's right on. You better watch YouTubes. We used to have to wait for the Fisherman magazine to come out to see how the guys won or how they fished. They didn't have interviews an hour after the tournament explaining exactly how they did it, which is great. But, next year, look out. There's going to be a few more guys on your spot. So, I don't know where to go.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give one. I don't usually give a tip. Usually I just have the people that are my guests do it. I think whether you're competitive or not, and this is something I've struggled with, I think you just need to force yourself to have fun. Turn yourself into a kid again. Go catch walleyes, go catch bluegills, go catch crappies, go catch largemouth bass, smallmouth bass. Especially on your off time, just go enjoy yourself, because if you're fishing tournaments, it gets to be a little stressful. There's money involved. There's money that you have to put down to fish. And if you're not fishing well, man, it eats away at your brain. Last year, I missed championship by a couple spots. Danny didn't have a great season. Didn't fish a couple events. Didn't quite turn out the way that we all expect to and want to do well. We all have confidence in our ability. So make sure you're having fun more than anything.
That's key. Fun is key.
Yeah, fun is key.
And honestly, running with Jerry, running with Danny, running with Pat, some of our other guys, Jeff Taggett, that we did make it fun after we got off the water. We did. We put the stuff aside and we had fun after that. And then the next day we got serious.
Yeah,
and I think you missed that now. Yeah.
I've been able to compete at other sports and at other things, and I will say that those days of fishing and traveling, I'm not a traveler. I really don't care to travel all that much, but those times were the best times of my life, without a doubt.
Yeah, they were. You guys coming up this February?
Yep.
Yes.
You are? Jerry, you and I are going to jump in the boat in the tournament.
I told him we need to go to the ice derby this year.
Yeah, we gotta get Dougie to get up there now.
Fish camp. You got to make it to fish camp.
If you're watching this, you got to get up there.
Yeah.
Now the whole internet's got to get out.
He did just try calling me, so you know.
Nice. Well, guys, I appreciate you for your time. I appreciate what all you guys have done for the walleye industry. Danny, get that thing better so you can go win a championship on Green Bay.
I'm going to. Yeah, I got Alpina in about 4 or 5 weeks, so I'm going to take her easy for the next little bit so I can get back out there and compete. So I know I'm not going to be able to live scope, but
You'll find a way.
compete. Yeah,
Oh, you will. You
I'll
will.
find a way.
Yeah, he will.
Well, thank you, guys. And
All
guys,
right, guys.
everybody who's watching, I appreciate you watching. Stick around for the next episode of the Walleye Files. We got some really cool things that are going to drop here pretty quick. A new sponsor coming very soon. But again, thanks to our sponsors, Striker Brands, Lake Effect Lures, and Walleye Nation Creations. Thanks for watching, guys.
All right. See you guys later.